YouTube. Born to be wild, NE here, and as always, NE stands for Nebraska. Go Big Red Huskers. It's Tuesday, the 21st of April. Forecasted high in Lincoln is 72, with only 5 to 10 mile an hour winds. So I've got a 4.5 hour route planned. That's riding time. Social distancing all the way. Changed the oil and filter in the bike yesterday. First time I've put in synthetic oil. We'll see. I don't know how I will see how well that works. I think it will work just fine. The big question is, what's the oil change interval? $3,500 miles or so with dinosaur oil. Can you go 7,000? 8,000? My brother says 10,000. I'd rather err on the side of changing it a little bit too frequently, I would say. The Yamaha engine should last forever. Keep the oil and filter changed. So much is happening these days, and so much is not happening these days. Oh my. 2 Sundays ago, my daughter went into the ER. I was there for a number of hours, did not get admitted. But we did get caught up in the no visitors in the ER. And with what's going around and with my daughter's history and personal situation, it scared the bejeebers out of me to think of her being there alone. No advocate, no one to hold her hand, brush her forehead. Thank goodness that visit was just for a few hours and was limited to the emergency room. But then late Saturday night, just before midnight, she went in again. And this did result in an admission with a 2-night stay. Got out yesterday morning. So kind of a personal twinge of what so many people in our country and probably around the world are dealing with, both from the patient's perspective and from the perspective of family and friends. They're isolated. Many of them die with no one there except for the nursing staff. Hospitals are using Zoom to try to connect the patient to family. or FaceTime or whatever video conferencing solution. Maybe it doesn't hit a lot of people as hard as it hits me. I hope that as we move towards a phased reopening, that our governors will be smart and not rush it arbitrarily. I fear that if we do so, we are risking rise again of the virus. If that happens, we're risking both the goal of reopening and hurting people at the same time. I'm not saying I have any answers. But I do put a little bit more faith in science than some people do and some governors appear to do. We do not have a stay-at-home order in Nebraska. We are encouraged to stay at home and when out, be safe, wear masks, face coverings. We are not to gather in groups of more than 10. Salons, barbershops, tattoo parlors, dentists' offices are all closed. Truly elective surgery has been postponed. But just yesterday, I think, our governor said that he would allow elective surgeries to begin again. Nebraska has made some national news anyway. There's an outlet mall between Lincoln and Omaha on the interstate. That outlet mall has been shut, but now has announced that they're going to reopen. And I think initially the reopen date was this Friday. Just this morning I saw an adjustment, at least a public adjustment, to the so-called opening plan. They're going to take between 1 and 3 weeks to open up the stores, what they called in their announcement desanitizing everything, prepping the stores to be social distancing compliant before they open up the doors to the public. Again, shopping malls have not been shut down by government edict. This mall shut down on its own volition. Lincoln has two malls, one enclosed and one outdoor. The outlet mall between Lincoln and Omaha is an outdoor outlet mall, like most outlet malls that I've seen anyway. So the manager of that mall is not violating any government direction. I guess my main hope is that the governors will be smart, keep public health as the top priority, listen to the science, and if they if it does turn out to be a mistake, that they'll step up to their responsibility and accountability, unlike our president. No clear-cut answer one way or the other, so I just can't say that bad decisions are being made and there's going to be bad things happen. I think because none of us know, really. I mean, none of us. We all have what we think we want and what we think we prefer, but none of us know. I tend to believe that phased reopening should be monitored and controlled with an aggressive testing plan and with an aggressive contact tracing activity when new cases are discovered. The plan that our federal government announced last Thursday contained no recommendations about how quantitatively how many of the two different kinds of tests, diagnostic and antibody tests, should be conducted, who should be the target audience of the testing. And there just seems to be so much confusion and needless and stupid competition between states because the federal government won't step up and play a coordinator role, coupled with exercising the authorities that our federal government in this country has to direct and drive the manufacture and production of things like PPE, personal protective equipment, and testing kits, etc. So we are where we are, and I hope that human suffering can be mitigated as best we can. think if we can establish a decent level of confidence in the consumer, that a lot of parts of the economy will bounce back. Maybe not quickly, maybe in phases, I don't know. Other parts are going to be hurting. Your level of confidence might need to be higher to get on an airplane for a long flight than to go to a park or to go to church where they're practicing social distancing. And everybody's evaluation of the risk is going to be different, unique to them. What I feel, and I could be wrong, what I feel is there are so many people who are, or appear to be, only thinking about themselves and not how they're taking part in the plan helps others in selfless ways. And I'm an old fart now, and I think I've seen over the decades, 4.5 decades or so, that in general our society in America has become more me-centered, more selfish, more what's in it for me, what's convenient for me, more that those types of attitudes and feelings have become more and more prevalent over time, spread out over approximately 4.5 decades. And then we have some politicians and some media and some special interest groups that seem to be feeding that sort of attitude rather than promoting, hey, we're all in this together, let's be a team to fight this thing and get through it. And that makes me uneasy. You know, I've felt this way obviously for a long time, but now we face a crisis. And, you know, when systems or societies have some weaknesses in them, stress and pressures on those systems or those societies can cause breaking to commence and to begin. Again, I don't pretend to be an expert or a know-it-all or I'm not, and I'm not taking the position of I'm wrong. Everybody who disagrees me, that I'm right, and everybody that disagrees with me is wrong. Not at all. But we human beings can be dominated by our emotions, and a lot of times when we act or make decisions out of emotion. They can be short-sighted, ill thought out, and thus a lot more risky and subject to negative outcomes. I really like a book by a guy named Jonathan Haidt, H-A-I-D-T, entitled something like The Righteous Mind, How Good People Differ Over Politics and Religion. The central subject is an analysis and discussion of moral psychology. The author's goal, or at least one of his goals, is to try to get people on extremes to understand that that gap between those extremes will never be closed or even narrowed unless you can try to understand where the other side is coming from and acknowledge that it's valid. It's not just some crazy crackpot thinking that the other side has. And then when you attempt communication, show each other, especially if you're the one, you need to show the other side that you understand and want to take into account where they're coming from. Stephen Covey says it much more succinctly. I might butcher the exact quote, but it's something very close to: seek first to understand, and only then to be understood. When we get wrapped up in ourselves, our own beliefs, our own feelings, our own view of morals, many of us tend to be just dismissive of anyone who has a different way of looking at the world or a different way of looking at situations. John Danforth was a U.S. Senator from Missouri, an ordained Episcopal priest, and a lawyer. For a short time, he was our country's ambassador to the UN under President Bush. And he wrote a book entitled Faith and Politics. Might have been a subtitle that is escaping me. As he observed, especially in Congress, how Congress began a process of turning into enemy camps and me versus you thinking, us versus them thinking. One of the dynamics that fed that growing divide that, in my opinion, started back when in the time frame where Bill Clinton was president and Newt Gingrich was the Speaker of the House. Newt Gingrich brought a very combative us versus them attitude towards his role in governing. But John Danforth says, you know, if in arguing or in believing I say and think that my position is aligned with God's position, and therefore, if you are not aligned with my position, you are standing against God. And he posited the question, how do you bridge that gap? Whoa. Deep stuff for a motorcycle ride, eh? The challenging part is there is no answer. There are no answers. There are no absolutes. That's my belief. And when we human beings try to create and defend absolutes, we just aren't being real. It's kind of a fake position, in my opinion. None of that is to say we shouldn't debate, we shouldn't argue, we shouldn't converse about what things might be more good and what things might be more bad. And from a government perspective, we want to strive to do things that are more good than are more bad. And even those terms are relative, and that's why the arguing and the deliberating and the debating and the is so necessary. It's been like that since before the United States became the United States. If you study our history, you study our founding. We morphed from Articles of Confederation to a Constitution. In the process of creating that Constitution and adopting that Constitution was fraught with disagreement and debate. I don't know any better than you do, and you do not know any better than I do. Socrates defined, and back in his day it was a wise man. Thank goodness today it's a wise person. A wise person knows that they know really very little of the overall body of knowledge and thought. And they admit that to themselves, and they consequently seek out additional perspectives, additional information, additional data. And they do that deliberately before they make a big decision or form an opinion or a position on a subject. In our narrow way of thinking, we have lost wisdom. On that note, I think I should reset my frame of mind and enjoy. My goodness. What a day. And very unusual in this part of the world, in this, well, really any time of the year. The winds are only 5 to 10 miles an hour. Tomorrow they'll be back up to 20. But today we have a respite. Anyhow, anyway, if you've listened this far, thank you. Always feel free to comment, argue, debate in the comments below. I will always request that debate and argument and discussion is done civilly and with respect towards each other. Nothing wrong with having differences of opinions, but another trend that's been part of this us versus them, me versus you, win versus lose mentality that's taken over is we tend to demonize, we tend to call each other names much more often than we used to. And that's been exacerbated by social media and, sad to say, some leaders or people who are in leadership positions. So have at it. Please do it with civility and without losing respect for me or for each other. Take care all. Bye-bye.